Alexander Hale sat alone in his home office, the city lights stretching like a river of stars beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. His fingers hovered over the mouse as he clicked through the hidden camera feeds he had installed throughout his mansion. Every room, every corner, every moment of his son's day. "I pay the best people to take care of him," Alexander whispered to himself, voice tight. "But I can't trust anyone completely. Not after what happened." His son, Liam, 10 years old, had been paralyzed from the waist down in a car accident 2 years ago. Since then, Alexander had devoted himself to protecting Liam, surrounding him with the best caregivers, adaptive equipment, and constant supervision. But even that wasn't enough. Fear gnawed at him. Fear that someone would make a mistake, that Liam would hurt himself or worse. And so, he had installed cameras. Hidden cameras. To watch over his boy. Tonight, like many nights, Alexander was reviewing the footage. He paused on a familiar figure. Sophie, the young maid he had hired 6 months ago. She was 22, with soft brown hair pulled back in a practical ponytail, and eyes that seemed to see people, not just tasks. On the screen, she was helping Liam adjust his blanket, smoothing the wrinkles carefully with a gentle smile. Alexander felt a pang of something unfamiliar. Admiration, maybe guilt. He leaned closer to the monitor, squinting at the scene. Sophie noticed Liam's juice cup teetering on the table. She moved quickly, knocking it over in the process, but her reaction was immediate. She grabbed a towel, cleaned the spill, and held Liam's hand. "It's okay, buddy," she whispered softly. Liam giggled, a small, unrestrained sound that made Alexander's chest tighten. He shook his head, leaning back in his chair. "I can't believe I'm watching this. And yet, I can't look away." Over the next few hours, Alexander continued his silent vigil. He watched Sophie as she helped Liam with small, everyday tasks. She adjusted his wheelchair straps with patience, placed a favorite stuffed dog next to him, and carefully refilled his snack bowl. Liam, for his part, seemed more relaxed around her than anyone else. He laughed when Sophie made silly faces, shouted in mock frustration when she challenged him to reach a toy on the high shelf, and even tried to sneak a cookie from the counter while she wasn't looking. Sophie caught him every time, but instead of scolding, she laughed and let him win, ruffling his hair gently. Alexander felt a strange mix of pride and unease. She cared for his son in a way he never could. And yet, he could not shake the feeling of being an observer in his own home, a stranger to the private moments of his child's life. At one point, Sophie sat on the floor with Liam, spreading out an art kit. Liam's hands shook as he tried to hold a brush. Sophie took his hand gently. "I've got you, Liam," she said. "Let's make something beautiful." Alexander watched, transfixed, as the boy's face lit up in a genuine smile. For the first time in years, he felt a glimmer of hope. But then a flicker of doubt returned. He thought about the cameras, the hidden eyes that watched every gesture. He had installed them out of fear, yet the footage was teaching him something he hadn't expected. Love could not be controlled, but it could transform lives in ways even money could not buy. Days passed, and Alexander found himself returning to the footage nightly. Sophie and Liam's bond grew with each passing scene. She taught him to paint with his fingers, read stories aloud, and even laugh at silly jokes. She encouraged small acts of independence, letting Liam try feeding himself, exploring new toys, and expressing his frustration without shame. One evening, the camera caught Sophie making a funny song about Liam's wheelchair. "Oh, roll, roll, little Liam, you're faster than the wind," she sang, twirling around the room in an exaggerated dance. Liam giggled until tears ran down his cheeks. Alexander watched silently from his office, a smile tugging at his lips. "She's good for him," he murmured. "Better than I could ever be." Alexander realized something important. Protection alone was not enough. Liam needed joy. He needed someone who would love him without fear or judgment. And Sophie, simple, kind-hearted Sophie, was giving him exactly that. Yet Alexander's old habits died hard. He paused the video as Sophie left the room, frowning. He wanted to approach her to say something, anything. But what could he say? That he had been spying on her? That he had doubted her? And so he watched, night after night, until one day, The footage revealed a moment that would change everything. It was a rainy afternoon. Liam, restless from being indoors, had been rolling around the living room in his wheelchair. Suddenly, the camera caught a minor accident. Liam tipped slightly, wheels slipping on the wet hardwood floor. Sophie's reaction was instantaneous. She was at his side in seconds, holding him steady, checking for injuries and speaking softly. "It's okay, Liam. I've got you. Don't worry." Alexander held his breath as the maid calmly managed the situation. She used cushions to stabilize him, gently wiped his hands, and encouraged him with a smile. Liam's initial fear melted into relief and laughter. And then came the moment Alexander could not unsee. Sophie knelt beside Liam, whispering words Alexander could barely hear. She closed her eyes briefly, her lips moving as if she were praying. Her hands rested on Liam's, holding him gently, conveying more care than Alexander thought possible. The billionaire leaned back in his chair, emotion choking him. Here was someone who loved his son, not for payment, not for recognition, but simply because she cared. The next day, Alexander found Sophie in the kitchen, arranging Liam's snacks. He took a deep breath and spoke. "Sophie," he began, voice tight. "I need to tell you something. I've been watching the cameras." Sophie froze, eyes wide. Fear flickered across her face. "I thought I needed to protect Liam from everyone," Alexander continued. "But it turns out it's you protecting him, and I can't thank you enough. You treat him like family." Sophie blinked, overwhelmed. "Sir, I just love him. He's like a little brother to me. That's all I want, to make him happy." Alexander swallowed hard. I was wrong to doubt you. From now on, I want you to know something. You're part of this family. Not just a maid. Part of the family." Tears welled up in Sophie's eyes, and Liam, watching from his wheelchair, reached out his small hand toward Alexander. "Daddy," he asked, "can Sophie stay?" Alexander knelt beside him, feeling the weight of the past years lift. "Yes, buddy. She's always going to be with us." From that day on, life in the Hale mansion changed. Alexander stopped spying. The cameras were turned off, and for the first time, he allowed himself to be present. Not as a watcher, but as a father. He spent hours with Liam, learning to roll his wheelchair properly, to help him paint, and even to laugh at silly songs. Sophie was no longer an employee. She was a sister, a friend, a constant source of love and joy for the boy who had known too much fear. One afternoon, the three of them baked cookies in the sunlit kitchen. Flour dusted their faces. Liam giggled uncontrollably when Sophie flicked a bit of frosting at him. Alexander joined in, laughing like he hadn't in years. It was messy, chaotic, and perfect. Later, Liam handed Alexander a drawing. 3 stick figures holding hands, smiling. Beneath them, in childish letters, he had written, "My family." Alexander's throat tightened. He hugged Liam, then Sophie, holding them close. For the first time in years, he felt complete. "I thought cameras could protect him," Alexander whispered, voice full of emotion. But it wasn't protection he needed. It was love. And Sophie gave that freely. That's how I learned what family truly means. As the sun set, their laughter echoed through the house. Outside, the city sparkled, but inside, the Hales had something no money could buy. A family bound by trust, care, and the simple power of love. Sometimes it takes watching someone else care to realize what really matters. For Alexander, it took hidden cameras to see that protection alone is never enough. Love, kindness, and patience, that's what keeps a family whole. And Sophie had given all of that, changing the lives of a father, a son, and herself forever.